citizens will be able to get more power over their personal data in a planned overhaul of data protection. What's that all about? Take a look at this special report for more.
India may not be doing much to bring into effect strict data protection laws, but it seems that other countries have already geared up to ensure online safety of their citizens. The UK government has come up with a new data protection bill that aims to give people more control over their personal data, so much so that people will get the right to delete their online past as well. The new bill proposes a set of new measures which will bring data laws in line with new European regulations. The bill grants people more control over how companies use their personal data, while allowing users to ask companies for removal of personal data. The bill will also expand personal data to include IP addresses and internet cookies, require firms to make online consent explicit while allowing users to move data between companies. The new bill looks promising as it will give people more control over their data and require more online consent. To ensure that companies comply with the legislation and don't breach the rules, the data watchdog will be given more powers to enforce new measures. It will be able to levy fines of up to £17 million or 4% of a company's global turnover for breaching rules. While the new reforms seem to ensure better data privacy and online protection to British citizens, the question that pops up is when will India have full menu data protection laws? Bureau Report, WION.
Let's break this down further for our viewers. Joining us on this special broadcast this evening is Nilesh Jain, Country Manager, India and SAARC Trend Micro India. Also joining us is Arun Vishwanath, Associate Professor, Department of Communication at University of Buffalo. Coming to you first, Mr. Vishwanath, what do you make of this overhaul, and is it necessary and the urgent need of the hour?
Well, it's good to be on your show, by the way. I think this is a much needed change in laws, and I think every country in the world has got to do this, and we have to do this proactively. I mean, not only because there's so much data right now out there, but the problem is that the breaches are getting bigger and bigger, and more of this data is coming out into the open. So unless we can stop companies or hold them responsible, and unless all of us can have a mechanism for, turning the clock back should there be a breach, should there be our data out there, I think, the future looks like, bleaker in the countries in which these kind of laws are not passed.
All right, Mr. Jain, I'll just get you in on the discussion as well in just a bit. Let's go straight across first to our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark, who's also joining us on the broadcast. What are the locals really saying about this move, Mandy?
I think it's been very well accepted here. It's appreciated. There's a lot of concerns people have, specifically when it comes to social media and children maybe posting stuff when you were in your teens and you regret posting quite a few things. This law also gives the ability to delete that history, and maybe it was a childhood mistake. It also does protect the citizens' rights a lot more. And that has been seen as a very welcome strategy. And overall, Theresa May, when she first came into power, she made it very clear that she wanted to really tighten control over the internet. Specifically, she was talking about companies like YouTube and Google that allow videos of extremism to be available on the web without being clamped down. But overall, there's a wider belief that laws have to be put in place and more control has to happen over the internet and people's personal data. And so this is really part of that structure where she wants to push this forward.
Interesting. Mr. Jain, having more control over personal information, is that never a bad idea according to you? And should this move be replicated in other countries like India as well?
In India, again, we have seen a lot of big digitization movement happening. So today, in India, we are probably world's largest mobile user. We have around 734 million mobile users. In last couple of years, we have seen 5 times more internet usage. Now we are living into the interesting time wherein the data economy is surging. Every company in this earth, either you are in FMCG or consumer durable or banking, you are doing a data mining. You are trying to get into touch with customer by accessing the data, And now, in the lack of any governance framework there, company also don't know what kind of data they can use and how best they can use. So there is a big need for India. We might have recently seen the news that WION Sri Krishnan committee has been formed in India. They are working on framework to put in data privacy law, data protection law. But we are already late. So let's see how fast they move, how fast they can implement those laws in India. We are already seeing a lot of data infiltration happening around that.
Ms. Vishwanath, can I get you in on this? About time that such a move is replicated in India as well?
Well, I can't speak to India per se, but I think even in the United States, we're lacking in terms of these kind of laws. We're a very consumer-driven society. And to second some of the points your other guests have raised, I mean, with technology moving at the pace at which it is, processing moving at the pace at which it is, everything from our DNA, which is also protected in this new law, in this new proposed law, is going to be digitized. So yeah, does India require it? Absolutely. But does the United States require it? Absolutely. And we don't have such a comprehensive law. The Europeans have been much more aggressive and proactive when it comes to this, and it's great to see the British do the same.
All right, Mandy, huge thumbs up coming in from our panelists for this move, definitely. Help our viewers understand, has there been any opposition coming in to this move?
There hasn't been a lot of opposition. There has voices of dissent worrying about freedom of expression. We have smaller businesses that are worried really what it means for them and how complex these new laws are, and might they accidentally fall foul of the law, and how big these fines are, because the fines are set to be £17 million or 4% of the gross international turnover, which could be crippling for a small company. So it's the worry that maybe these smaller companies might hold on to that data and not realize they have made a mistake and then be hit hard with a fine. So it's more about building awareness and understanding and bringing these companies up to speed. And that was some of the concerns that have been brought out. But by and large, the overall public is very warm to this feeling. It also gives power to people who have been victims of, let's say, the internet when it comes to quote unquote what they call here revenge porn, when a couple might have filmed something but they break up, that gets posted on the internet. It became very difficult for the other person who never consented it to be made public to get it pulled down, to get it removed. This helps those victims of those crimes really be able to get the power back and take those private videos that were never meant for the public to get pulled down. So a lot more people feel like the power is being put back in their hands.
All right, Mandy, just before we let you go, how soon can we expect this revision or the overhaul to be carried through?
Well, it's going to Parliament, but in all likelihood, there's very little opposition. It will likely be passed, and that can take a couple of weeks. Of course, at the minute, Britain is in parliamentary recess over the summer, so yes, we can expect it likely in September and a couple of weeks after that.
All right, we're going to let you go on that note, Mandy, as Mandy was just pointing out, there's not been much opposition coming in, but Mr. Jain, I do want to get you in on this. Is there a worry that too much control over your personal information could also lead to a danger in a certain way?
Certainly, and that's the point I was trying to make. Like
yes,
in India today, we are before we even go to a GDPR kind of law, which talks about protection of the data, we first need to define the privacy. So our by law, the privacy has been defined some 40, 50 years back. In the digitization world today, wherein we have probably 98% of India's citizens already linked to UID card, and we have recently heard the news that few of the UID card information got leaked. We don't even know what does privacy mean. Can we share the phone number? Can we send the email ID? So as a law in India, they first need to define what privacy means. And second thing is, when you talk about the protection, we need to bring in the transparency in place. Most of the users today download a lot of applications. They do a lot of buying. They don't even know what information they are allowing them to do. Like in GDPR, it clearly says that apart from, when you're downloading some application and making use of some data, you are supposed to make a tick mark. That is no more useful. You have to even sign and consent letter from the user, and then make sure that users are well aware about it. Here in India, we are not even aware about it. So for again, the second part is most of the company are trying to make use of the data which is available. For them, it's a survival question. If they are not living in the big data world, they are not doing a data mining, they won't be able to survive and do a customized marketing. So too much of restriction will restrict the growth for most of the companies who are trying to make business out here. So yes, you are right. We have to make sure that we define what does privacy mean. We have a transparency in place and let all the consumer know that this is what we are going to do with your data.
Mr. Vishwanath, is this a double-edged sword according to you? Too much control over one's personal information and data, and also, as you were just pointing out, a move of such a manner should be replicated in the United States. But what are the hurdles that you witnessed on that front?
To your first question, I think it's an absolute problem, right? I mean, we don't want to have too many restrictions before we can figure out exactly what we mean by some of these things. So to give you an example, with this UK law that's being proposed, even cookies that are put on your computer right now, which every organization, every website out there, many of these consumer websites depend on for monetizing their advertising revenues and search engine revenues. Those things have got to be, in some way accepted, consented to by the end user. And that's a pretty tall order. It's going to slow down commerce, it's going to slow down trade, it's going to slow down even how things move online. So a lot of these are evolving ideas, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time. Even in the United States, I mean, that's why we do have a pushback. I mean, we're in an extremely consumer-oriented society where everybody's used to free emails and free search engines and free everything. But yet there has got to be a mechanism we can protect people from that same free search engine giving results of breached data that nobody consented to. So there's constantly going to be this push and pull. For the longest time since the internet has started, there's been little to no regulation protecting people and protecting our data. And now, as we get into the 21st century of breaches, I think we're starting to now the pendulum is starting to swing in the other direction. I don't think this is the answer, though. I don't think we want to go to the other side of this. We want to meet somewhere in between. And I think these laws have got to be rationalized, and that's what the court systems are for. And so whether it's the United States, whether it's India, whether it's the UK or the rest of the European Union, I think that's the direction in which we seem to be headed, and that's the positive note here.
Let me also get in Mr. Pranesh Prakash, Policy Director, Center for Internet and Society, who's also joining us on the broadcast. Where do you stand on the fact that there is, of course, concern that too much control over one's personal information could lead to the dangers that we've been discussing?
I'm sorry I came in a bit late, so I'm not sure what dangers you have been discussing so far. But I acknowledge there are concerns that arise between the right to privacy and the right to freedom of expression, the right to privacy and security. There are concerns that arise. But what we have to recognize is that right now, on the losing side is the right to privacy. In the UK, for instance, the Investigatory Powers Act, it heavily restricts the control that individuals have over their personal data in the name of security. And so one must acknowledge that so far, privacy in the 21st century seems to be on the losing side, thanks to the ability of large corporations to make use of whatever data they want, even in many cases without your consent, which is why the general data protection regulations in the EU and currently the proposal for the new Data Protection Act in the UK are a step in the right direction, because they finally seem to want to restore the kind of balance that we ought to have, and they have been formulated after a robust debate, the kind of debate that we here in India have not had. And I'm sure that there will be much more debate in the UK in the days to come as well. I'm very glad that, for instance, the kinds of penalties that the UK can levy on companies like Facebook has increased according to the latest draft. And that is a step in the right direction, that children have been provided far more control upon getting majority over the data that they previously shared, that there are many positive things like this in the proposed law. And I must disagree with Mr. Vishwanathan in the position that he took vis-a-vis the US, where I think the privacy protection is far too little and far too less.
All right, we're going to leave it there for the moment. Thanking Mr. Jain for joining us. I am going to, however, request Mr. Prakash and Mr. Vishwanath to stay on with us. It might, of course, take some time for these data protection measures to come into effect. But the good news certainly is that some countries are putting up their socks to ensure better online safety of their citizens. We would definitely wish to see such stringent data protection measures in India as well.